All leaders must learn the basic laws so they can use them as illustrations as well as use them for productivity. Here's the first of the basic laws. Whatever you sow, you reap. Now here's another way to put it on the positive side. In order to reap, you must sow. Reaping is reserved for those who sow, who plant. To deserve the harvest, you must plant the seed. Take care of it in the summer. Carefully harvest it and then do wise things with the harvest. Here's the rest of the law of sowing and reaping. If you sow good, you reap good. If you sow bad, you reap bad. You can't sow bad and hope for good. You can't plant weeds and hope for flowers. It works both positive and negative. Now, here's something else about the law of sowing and reaping. You don't reap what you sow. That's important to understand. You reap much more than what you sow. If you just reap what you sow, what's the exercise for? No, we don't reap what we sow. We reap much more than what we sow. Now, here's what's important to understand on that. It works both positive and negative. The old prophet said, if you sow to the wind, you don't reap a wind. You reap a whirlwind. You've got to be careful sowing to the wind. It doesn't come back as a wind. It comes back as a whirlwind. That's on the negative side. But now it also works on the positive side. If you plant a cup of corn, how much do you get back? A cup? No, a bushel for the cup. You get back much more than what you plant. That's the reason for planting, for the increase. Positive, negative. Now here's the next key to the law of sowing and reaping. Sometimes it doesn't work at all. Everybody has to understand. The farmer plants the crop in the spring, takes care of it all summer, is an honorable man, loves his family, is a decent citizen. But the day before he sends the combines into the field, a hailstorm comes along and beats his crop into the ground, and it's gone, it's lost. So this time it didn't work. So now what must the farmer do? He's got to decide whether to do it again or not. Shall we take another chance in the next spring? We would advise him to do so, even though he lost everything in the last harvest. And it didn't work. You didn't reap what you sowed. But here's the law of averages. Here's the odds. More often than not, you reap what you sow. More often than not, you'll have a harvest if you plant in the spring. There's no guarantee, but more often than not. And guess what more often than not is? Pretty good odds. It's better than Las Vegas. The law of sowing and reaping. Next, one of the most important laws to learn is the law of averages. If you do something often enough, you'll get a ratio of results. Once you understand that, the world is yours. Learning to employ people in the unique thing called the law of averages is stunning in its result in terms of fortune. Let's say you're in sales and you talk to 10 people just getting started. If you talk to 10, you get 1. We now have what we call the beginning of a ratio. Talk to 10, 9 say no, 1 says yes. I'll buy your product. I'll take your service. Somebody says, well, 1 out of 10 isn't that good. Well, you're just getting started. Because here's what happens with the law of averages. Once it starts, it tends to continue. If you talk to 10 and get 1, chance is excellent. If you talk to 10 more, you'll get another one. In baseball, we call it batting average. Swing 10 times, get a hit. Swing 10 times, get a hit. Nobody bats 9 out of 10. So you don't have to be perfect here. All you have to do is understand the law of averages. Now, even if you're only getting 1 out of 10, you can now start to compete. If you've been here a long time, you can get 9 out of 10. I just joined, I can only get 1 out of 10. I'm telling you, if we have a contest, I will beat you. Say, well, you just started. How could you beat me? It's very simple. If we have a 30-day run on a contest or a 60-day run, while you talk to 10 and get 9, I will talk to 100 and get 10. I win. Isn't that clever? Here's what I do if I'm new. I make up in numbers what I lack in skill. I make up in numbers what I first lack in skill. Now, when my skills increase, I don't have to do 100 to get 10. Once you understand the law of averages, I'm telling you, it's so exciting to work with the law of averages. The law of averages works in our little money plan here. You know, chances are excellent if you have this little plan. I'm telling you, chances are excellent. It'll work, it'll work, it'll work. The ratios will work for you. Here's what else is exciting. The law of averages can be increased. At first, you only get 1 out of 10, but the better you get, the more skills you develop. Now you get 2 out of 10, and then 3 out of 10. And you don't need more than about 2, 3 out of 10 to get rich. In working with people, there's a unique story about the law of averages. It says the sower went out to sow the seed. Number 1, he had excellent seed or a great story to tell and a good product to sell. And it says the sower was ambitious, got up early in the morning and went out to do the deal. So good seed, ambitious sower, and he starts to sow the seed. But here's what happens. Make the notes. The first part of the seed that he sowed, the birds got, and the birds are going to get some. John said, yes, I will come check out the meeting, see if that's an opportunity for me. He says, I will be there on Tuesday night. Tuesday night comes, John isn't there. Say, I wonder where he is. The birds, whatever form they come in. And he's not there. Somebody stole the seed. Somebody robbed him of the opportunity. Guess what you can do about it? Nothing? Well, you could chase birds, but I'm telling you, it's not a good deal. You say, well, I'll get a hold of John, whoever talked him out of coming, I'll go straighten them out. I'm telling you, you've asked for more than you can handle. Here's what you should do. Here's what the sower did. He kept sowing the seed. Here's what you can do if you stay busy. Sow more than the birds can get. Just depend on the law of averages. Not trying to straighten out every problem. So the birds are going to get some. Now it says he kept sowing the seed, and now the seed falls on rocky ground where the soil is shallow, and the little plant starts to grow, but the first hot day, it withers and dies. So make the note. The hot weather's going to get some. You recruit somebody and they join, say, hey, I'm going to really do great here. And 2 days later, somebody says, boo, and they quit. The first hot day. So what can you do about that? Nothing. Because if you start chasing, trying to fix this, I'm telling you, it's unfixable. But here's what you can do to fix your future. Keep doing like the sower did. He kept on sowing. And you can't be responsible for the shallow ground. That's somebody else's responsibility. So here's the third key now. He keeps sowing the seed, and now the seed falls on thorny ground. And this time the little plant starts to grow again, but the thorns choke it to death, and it dies. So make the note. The thorns are going to get some. Here's what it called the thorns in this little story. The cares of life, little duties, little distractions. I said, John, we had a meeting last night. How come you weren't here? John says, well, I can't make every meeting. I said, why not? He said, well, the screen door came off the hinges. You just can't let your house fall apart. You got to take time and fix. I can hear the thorns. He said, some extra trash piled up in the garage. You just can't let mountains of trash pile up in your garage. What can I do about that? People let little things cheat them out of big opportunities. And sometimes it's a little heartbreaking to watch, especially if it's somebody you care about. But there are some things, remember, you can't straighten out. You just got to depend on something else for your fortune and your future. But now let's go to the rest of the story. Here's what it says. Finally, the sower keeps sowing the seed. Now it falls on good ground. Underline this, good ground. And it always will. If you keep sharing a good idea, it will someday fall on good ground. Productive ground, receptive ground, decision-making ground. Now, it was interesting, though, about the ground. Here's what it said about the ground. Some of this good ground now produce 30%, some produce 60%, and some produce 100%. What's that called? The law of averages. Everybody's not going to do the same. Everybody doesn't have the same ambitions. And you can't straighten this out now. You just have to take it like it comes. It's like the seasons. You can't rearrange them and say, I'll take 2 springs, 3 summers. No. You got to take them like they flow. But now, how do you get 100%ers? Some will produce 100%. How do you get some 100%ers? You got to go through the birds, and you got to go through the hot weather, and you got to go through the choking thorns, and you got to sort of put up with those, that haven't got much ambition, 30, 60%ers, and you'll get some 100%ers. The law of averages is at work in the university. Are there as many seniors as there are freshmen? Why is that? It's a mystery. The inevitable erosion of life says there's always going to be more freshmen than seniors. Not every race that started does everybody finish. The answer is no. Some people don't want to finish. Some people plant in the spring and leave in the summer. And you can't straighten that out. Here's what you can do. Keep telling the story. Keep sharing a good idea. And I'm telling you, it will work for you. So here's what we say. If you want a lot of graduating seniors, you must keep loading the freshman class. The law of averages. It's one of the greatest studies to make. It'll serve you well in your business career, your sales career, any kind of career. One more on the law of averages. There's an old rule, and it's been around a long time, that says 20% of the people do 80% of the business and 80% do 20%. And this is something you don't try to change or rearrange. It's part of the deal. Somebody says, well, I'll just fire the 80%. Say no, because whoever's left, 20% of them will do 80% and 80 will do 20%. That's not something you mess with. Here's what these laws are. Something you work with, something you understand and you work with. 20 are going to do 80. And it works everywhere. Ask the minister of the church, who puts up the money here to support the church? He says 20% of the people pick up 80% of the tab, and 80% pick up 20%. Americans paying taxes, what's the deal? 20% pay 80% of the taxes, and 80% pay 20% of the taxes to run the federal government. This is not something you mess with. This is something you work with till you understand it. Well, how do you work with the 80-20? Here's what you got to do. Part of it's time management. You can only give 20% of your time to the 80% because they're only producing 20%. Now you can give 80% of your time to the 20%. Now remember, the pull is in the opposite direction. Guess who wants 80% of your time? The wrong group. The wrong group. Now, this is not a moral question. The wrong group in terms of productivity and effectiveness in your business, your future. So what's the answer to that? Here's part of the answer. You can work individually with the 20%, but you can only work by group with the 80%. However, guess who usually wants your individual time? The 80%, and you cannot do that. That's the law of averages. Here's the next important law, called the law of faith. We covered it a little bit earlier in a fairly simple form. Faith is the ability to see things that don't yet exist. Faith, though, can turn difficulty into reality, positive reality. And I just want to give you this quick little line up here because it's so important to ponder it and then work it. Here's what faith is for. Number one, faith is the ability to see it as it is. Faith doesn't mind seeing it as it is because faith is a miracle worker. Faith does not ignore the negative. Faith uses the negative. Because if there was no negative, there'd be no need for faith. If everything is okay, what would you need faith for? You need faith because it isn't okay. Now, what isn't okay? Who knows? The situation that isn't okay. So here's what faith does. Number one, faith does not ignore the negative because faith now stands as the miracle worker if you let it work. So faith sees it as it is. If it's ugly, it's ugly. If it isn't working, it isn't working. If it's a mess, it's a mess. It doesn't hurt to call a mess a mess. You don't need to fancy it up here. If it's broke, it's broke. If it's miserable, it's miserable. Faith doesn't mind admitting that. Faith doesn't mind seeing that. Here's why. Number one, you can see it as it is. That's the beginning of faith, seeing it as it is. Now, here's the second step of faith. See it better than it is. Couldn't you see beyond the mess? The mess is for today. Couldn't you look into tomorrow? The answer is yes, I guess I could look into tomorrow. Humans have this incredible ability to look into tomorrow, to look into next week. So we not only have the ability to see it as it is, the beginning of faith, but to see it better than it is. Dream the dreams, make the plans, visualize, use your imagination, see it better than it is. Now here's the third step that turns faith into reality. Make it better than it is. Faith now must be invested in the muscle. But if you invest faith now in the action, you can take any situation and make it better than it is. Next, in the beginning of faith, seeing it as it is. Don't see it worse than it is. Don't blow it out of proportion. Some people have this tendency to blow it all out of proportion and say, well, it can't be that bad. If it's this bad, that's how bad it is. You don't need to multiply how bad it is by 10. That's not necessary here. Just as it is, that's the deal. As it is. Don't see it worse than it is. Now, here's the next unique key to faith. Don't see it for more than it can become. There's a thin line between faith and folly. Yes, it's possible to see yourself as a millionaire, but not overnight. Somebody says, well, yes, I can see that. Don't see it for more than it can become in a reasonable period of time. Yes, if it dropped out of the sky overnight, but that's not likely. But it's still possible to be a millionaire. It's still possible to be rich and wealthy, given a certain amount of time working with the law of averages and all the rest of the stuff we've talked about today. So don't see it for more than it can become so that you move into folly instead of faith. Plenty is possible without being foolish in your faith exercise. But now here's two more cautions. Number one, it might be worse than you first see it. You better look underneath. Because sometimes you just look at the surface. You better take a look. So that you can really see it as bad as it is. Not to overblow it now, but to make sure you see it as bad as it really is. Now here's the next one. Give yourself a chance to understand that it could be far more in the future than what you can first see. By faith, here's all you can see. The miracles that we see here gives us a certain amount of faith, but it looks like we need some more, we need some more. But you take the first step. Take the first step of what you can see. But give yourself a chance to be able to see it for more than what you first see it. On a foggy night, if all you can see is 100 feet, here's what you do. Walk that first 100 feet, now you can see another 100 feet. You can't see the 200 feet. But if you can see 100 feet, you walk the first 100 feet, now you can see another 100 feet. So I'm asking you to take the early steps of faith. Whatever you can see it possible to become, start believing that. Have faith for that. And I'm telling you, as that starts to exercise, you'll be able to see it for more and for more and for more. The possibilities will start to increase in your own imagination. The law of use. And it goes something like this. Whatever you don't use, you lose. Lack of use causes loss. On this planet. Maybe not the next one, but on this one. If you tie your arm to your body, leave it there long enough, you'll never use it again. It's over for the arm. Now, it may not be over, but it's over for the arm. The only way to keep the use of this arm is what? Keep using it. If you quit, you lose automatically. They don't bring it up for a vote. You lose automatically when you quit. Now, the same thing that goes for your arm goes for your brain, mentality. The same thing goes for all the human virtues. Ambition, unused, declines. Strong feelings, unused, diminish. It doesn't grow, it diminishes. Faith, unused, decreases. It's a law. Vitality unused diminishes. Energy unused decreases. The guy says, well, I'm going to save up my energy. You can't do that. That's like trying to save today, put it on the end of the year. See, you can't do that. They'll come take you away. If you don't use today, what? It's lost. The guy says, well, I'll work twice as hard tomorrow to make up for it. See, that's foolish. You could have done that anyway. Today unused is lost. A talent unused is lost. An ability unused is lost. So here's one of the key expressions of the evening. Take a new inventory of yourself. Starting tomorrow, new project. Take a new inventory. And make sure that all of your talent and ability and mentality and ingenuity and vitality and strong feelings, faith, courage, make sure that all you've got's being used. Otherwise, you lose. Now, one of the best illustrations of the law of use is a Bible story called the Parable of the Talents. The talent story. Interesting story if you haven't read it in a while. Just review it. It's a good story. An ancient story. It says there was a master with 3 servants. He got them together one day and he said to the 3, I've got these talents. And in those ancient days, a talent was a measure of gold. And he said to the 3 servants, take these talents and see what you can do with them while I'm gone. He said, I'm taking a journey and I'll be gone for a while. When I come back, we'll get together, go over the book, see how you did. He said, here's 5 of these talents for you. 5. Here's 2 of them for you. 2. And here's 1 for you. 1. The master said, take those talents, see what you can do with them. When I come back, we'll get together, we'll go over it all. The servant said, okay, master takes off. According to the ancient story, the master comes back from his trip. When he gets back, he gets the 3 servants together, and as he said he would, he asks, how did it go with those talents? You were 5. What happened? That servant said, well, I took the 5 talents you gave me, and I put them to work. A little shaky at first, but he said things finally got rolling. And he said, I poured it on. And he said, my talents grew to 7, 8, 9, 10. He said, I doubled my talents from 5 to 10. Books will show. Master said. One heck of a job. Or something like that. He said, I gave you 2 talents. What happened? That servant said, about the same thing happened to me. I put those 2 talents to work, poured it on. They grew to 3 and then to 4. He said, I doubled my talents from 2 to 4. Books will show. Master said, well done. He said, I gave you 1 talent. What happened? That servant said, well, I took the talents you gave me, and I carefully wrapped it, and I dug a hole and buried it. And camouflaged it, I suppose, right? So nobody would steal it. And he said, fortunately, nobody got it. And he said, I knew you were going to be here today, so I dug it up. Here it is, safely wrapped. I did not lose it while you were gone. According to the ancient story, the master said, take that talent away from him and give it to the man that's got 10. Now you might say, well, I don't like that arrangement. The poor guy's only got 1 talent. He's already got 10. It ought to be more even. Remember, I didn't ask you to like it. But this one I would ask you to learn, because it simply means whatever you do not employ, you forfeit. It's a law. So learn well the law of use.